Good afternoon, colleagues. I came here quite enthused today, but an hour and a half later I'm even more enthused. Cammie's talked about tourism growth and growth responsibility and recognising the importance of our sector, music to our ears, and Mike's given us some great stats to look forward to. So we're sitting on a success story, but there's so much more to do. So what I want to do in the next 10 or 15 minutes is just talk a wee bit about the city centre, what's happened over the last 6 or 7 years, and then some of the challenges and priorities I believe that we face going forward. So let's start the story. We have to go back a wee bit into history. Let's go back to 2016, 2017. The old St. James Centre, that much-loved, iconic building in the east end of the city, started to come down. It was undoubtedly the catalyst for huge change in our city. It was touched on earlier, but global retail changes had started. So many of you were sitting at home supporting Amazon and ASOS and all these businesses. There's no doubt that's happened throughout the whole world. The transformation of St. Andrew Square had started. The south side had been done, but through Standard Life, we had some fantastic new restaurants in the city. And we had seen an increase in hospitality provision. And as people have touched on already, our visit numbers were starting going up, which was great. But at that time, there started to be a concern about Princes Street. So fast forward to just before the pandemic. As I said already, highest visitor number recorded. The city was doing exceptionally well. Some people thought we were doing too well, unbelievably. We'd started to see some quality investors coming into the city centre, including Johnny Walker. And I'm saying that not as an advert for Johnny Walker. They'll need one coming forward. And the city centre was moving east, and it had moved east. We already touched on St. James, St. Andrew Square. You had the bus station, the railway station, the tram. The centre of gravity had undoubtedly moved to the east. We also had a situation where the big old department stores had either gone or were going. When I started this job 7 years ago now, we had House of Fraser, we had Debenhams, we had Topshop, Top Man, and we had BHS, we had Jenner's. They all went in a very short space of time. Unbelievable change. And of course, the pandemic just accelerated everything. We were all staying at home, no one was shopping, global changes, and that, I think, really accelerated this pace of change. And the investment really has been extraordinary. And before I touch on that, I just wanted to put this slide up, which I've used a few times before, just to give you some clarity about how footfall in the city works on an annual basis. You'll see from that graph that the peaks and troughs don't really change, but the numbers obviously do, so at different times of the year. Red was the cataclysmic event of 2020, and as we go further up, we obviously get closer and closer to the purple figure, which is 2019, as we've talked about already. And even at times this year, we exceeded it. So all the indicators are good. We are undoubtedly on a positive upward curve, as it said there. And I want to mention Christmas briefly as well. One, because it's the most relevant, but also I think it's really important just to work, to let you give an indication of how the city works. Over 2 million people attended activities in the city centre of Edinburgh. Yes, we were slightly down on 2019 figures, but that's to be expected. But we massively outperformed Scotland and the UK. This event was put on at short notice. There's been lots of conjecture about Christmas. No one with any sense of how the city operates can underestimate the impact Edinburgh's Christmas makes to the city centre retail and hospitality numbers. It's simply crucial that we continue to deliver as good a show as we possibly can, and thanks to Unique and Assembly for doing it at such short notice this year. We look forward to it being bigger and better in 23. So our figures, yes, are a wee bit below 2019, but they are still strong. The city is recovering, and is recovering well. I really like this next slide because I think it shows clearly the changes that are underway in Edinburgh city centre. Now remember, this is a bit of real estate in the city centre that's only a mile long and about 150 metres wide. It's not a big area, Edinburgh city centre. The red at all the development projects in the last 5 or 6 years. Obviously, St James, we've got the Dunard Centre, we've got Edinburgh Grand, Gleneagles, the north and south side of St Andrew's Square, all the old department stores on the frontages of Princes Street that are all either being developed or are being developed, and Johnny Walker on the West End. Huge development in a very short space of time. And this is really unprecedented. The only place I think that's in any way comparable is London with what's happening around Victoria and Battersea. So there's some numbers just to back that up. And again, remember, very small bit of real estate, 1.65 billion. And that's probably conservative. And you've got to remember that, yes, this is the city centre, but that doesn't include Haymarket, the EICC, Newtown North, the developments at Waverley, astronomical developments right throughout the city. And this isn't just private investment. The City Council have done and are investing huge amounts in mass infrastructure projects. Piccadilly Place, North Bridge, the trams, which we'll hear about, the East-West Cycle Link, and of course the George Street redesign project. Again, major infrastructure developments right in the heart of our city centre. Hotels were touched on previously as well. This I think is hugely important. Nearly 60,000 hotel rooms. We're going to increase capacity by, I suppose, very nearly a quarter. Huge increase in capacity in the city. And the Tourism 2030 strategy talks clearly about quality tourism, high-spending visitors. We have a number of high-quality hotels coming into the city. But importantly, we now need to recognise that. We've generated capacity, we've got the capacity to grow, and we need to invest in that growth to make sure we reach that capacity. And there's just some of the entrance into the city. You know, huge international top-end We've increased our retail and hospitality footprint in the city. Nowhere else bar London. You know, that's an amazing statistic coming out of the back of COVID. Yes, a huge amount of that is to do with the St James Quarter, of course it is. Yes, that has meant there's been some empty vacant units on Princes Street, but in overall terms, we've increased capacity. We're not alone in this. The city centre is changing worldwide. You know, how cities react to that is a gauge on their importance as a destination centre and also their attractiveness for inward investment. We've scored very highly on both of those, which is great news. Shout out to the council here, and Cami did mention it. I think the council and developers have worked extremely well together over the last 5 or 10 years. It's not easy trying to do development in a World Heritage site. And there's been some fairly high-profile things that have gone one way and gone another. We can't all be happy with everything that's happened, but primarily we're seeing mass development in the city of old historic buildings. And that takes a lot of goodwill and a bit of foresight by the council, so I applaud them for that. I go to a lot of conferences looking at city centres and how they develop across the world, and there's no doubt now that mixed use is the way forward. The old city centre that was full of department stores has undoubtedly gone forever. We need to have a mix of retail, leisure, entertainment, and even some residential. And I think that is potentially a growth area that we've not done as much of in the city centre as we could do. And again, it was touched on as well, hybrid working is here to stay. It's had a major impact on the city centre. We had approximately 40,000 people used to come to work in the city centre and sit behind the desk. We reckon at best on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and sometimes Thursdays, we've got half of that at the moment. Numbers are going slightly up. We've had impacts on Mondays and Fridays are undoubtedly quieter in the city than they used to be. And that has affected coffee shops, sandwich shops, bars and restaurants sometimes don't open on a Monday. So we have to adapt to that change as we move forward. But I think the important thing in all of this for how the city centre developed is it's been driven undoubtedly by tourism and hospitality. If it wasn't for tourism and hospitality, I fear to think what state the city centre would be in terms of empty property. I'm talking now on to restaurants, some of the fantastic new offerings we've got in St James and elsewhere. All this just adds to the mix. You know, we're increasing capacity. new bit of potential legislation comes out from the government. But business rates recently, retail got some support and reduced business rates. Hospitality tended to go up. That's going to affect bottom lines. Rents, also in terms of all the big new developments on Princes Street, I have a fear with the cost of borrowing going up, build costs going up, it's going to be harder and harder for these big sites to be developed. We're living in a pretty uncertain political world, whether that's at City Chambers, at Holyrood or at Westminster. I don't think anyone can say we're stable. We've got lots of things coming, city centre transformation, low emission zones, net zero, the deposit return scheme, which is going to impact all our hospitality businesses, the issue of short-term lets that Cami mentioned. The Westminster government, in their wisdom, decided to abolish tax-free shopping. Why would you do that when you want to attract high net worth and high spending people to come to your city? And we've had the recent announcement about potential marketing bans on alcohol. All these things are out there, they're being consulted, they will affect how we operate in the city. And it is, I think, disappointing from my point of view that so many of these things are coming at once. Coming out of COVID, we're recovering well, we've got all these things to think about. And I think now we have to look at the city centre generically as a destination, not Princes Street. Princes Street is not the retail centre of the city anymore, and it never will be. So these, for me, are probably my priorities looking after the business improvement district in the city. And the first one there, you know, I applaud Cami for his words today. He did that, I think. We have to realise that the visitor economy is absolutely critical to the overall city economy. And I don't think we've done a good job as an industry in getting that message out to the right people in terms of employment, supply chains, all the things that we know is the importance of the business economy. We need to do a better job in getting that out to the general public so they acknowledge it and we have slightly less complaints. Because it has been the catalyst for change, no doubt about it. I have a slight fear that we're a bit complacent, that we just think, oh great, COVID's over, people are going to come back and visit us. They're not. You know, we will get a certain percentage, of course we will, but the numbers that we need, we're committing to growth. We need to do more to get more people to come to us because people in tourist destinations like Barcelona, Madrid, Rome, Vienna, all these other places, they'll be doing it. We're in a competitive market. We can't just rely on what's been. We also need to do, I think, a lot to support our festivals and our event economy. Again, and I would say this, they're fundamentally crucial to the city centre economy, to the hotels, bars, restaurants, retailers. Absolutely critical. We've talked about growth. With increased capacity coming out of COVID, we now need to feed that growth. We need to work collectively to support, I believe, the investors who have invested huge amounts of money in our city on the basis that we will continue to be a fantastic tourist destination. And again, Cami mentioned it as well, the TVL. I'm really hopeful and positive about the TVL, you know, and I look forward to the consultation to decide how we're going to implement it, and importantly, how we're going to utilise the potential resources that we have. And for me, I'm pretty clear that a lot of the money that we generate, not all of it, because I understand there are competing council concerns, we need to support our attractions, we need to support our festivals, we need to support our events, we need to support strong destination management and marketing. You know, we have an opportunity here. We have a great opportunity in the next 2 or 3 years to get some real investment into delivering tourism and tourism growth for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I think, certainly I feel very lucky to work in the environment I do in the city centre, working in the industries I do, supporting the businesses that work here, that look to grow and move into the future. And I think all we've heard today is positive. I've not heard any negativity about where Edinburgh is going as a city. We just need to work together to make that a reality. Thank you.